Am I dead?
No, no. You've been healing so quickly. And no organs were hit, and your bleeding was really mild.
What this is is.
All right, we are back with one. Oops. All right, we are back with another one of these new movie reviews, and I really don't know how we're gonna talk about Beau's Afraid, but I'm gonna at least make an attempt. I'm gonna try. I would say that it's definitely rare for me to kind of follow directors and their specific movies and as they make them. Mostly it's just if a movie looks good, I'll watch it, and then at the end I'll see who directed it in the credits. I'll be like, oh. Well, I mean, recently I've been trying to kind of get more into the director side, try to follow them. But it didn't really happen too often. Because I would say really the only original one would have been like Sam Raimi that I was like a director I was a fan of. But it was really when Hereditary came out that I started thinking, I was like, ooh, I want to see another movie by Ari Aster. I want to see this guy do another movie. And so then Midsummer came out. I saw that a little late. I got to Midsummer about, I think, a year after it came out. I didn't like it more than Hereditary, but I definitely thought that they were kind of even with each other. Hereditary is a little bit higher, but if you're pitting Hereditary and Midsummer neck and neck, they both are pretty equal in my eyes. Hereditary just has a bit more pros, and I think has a bit more going for it. But after seeing Midsummer a year late and really liking that, we had a big break. There was like a 4-year gap where Ari Aster didn't make shit. And so I wasn't really able to keep up because he wasn't doing anything until Beau was Afraid. I saw the trailer for Beau was Afraid drop, and because I'd heard that Ari Aster was doing his third movie after forever, and it was going to be with Joaquin Phoenix, and I was like, oh, okay. I was a little concerned because he like just, I guess not just, but his last role was Joker, and I hadn't seen him in anything else, and so I was like, if I see him in another crazy person role, it's gonna deteriorate my view of this poor actor. Except I've seen him in lives, and I think he's probably doing that himself.
I didn't know that I was coming up here just now. They fucking tricked me. I'm not kidding.
But I mean, he's a weird guy. You can't help it. But when I watched the trailer, the first trailer for Beau is Afraid, I was immediately intrigued because it looked, it was enough to where like I was encapsulated. I was super intrigued. But while I was super intrigued, I didn't know what the movie was about. In the slightest clue. I had no idea. And it was definitely, yeah, it was, the trailer was edited in a way to where no one really knew what was going on. You could easily have chalked it up to whatever was going on in the trailer was in his head, but it looked a bit too wild for it to be something like that. Because I know that like after the trailer ended, my first thought was like, we're following a schizophrenic man through his life. And that could be interesting. But when I saw this movie and the movie ended, it was definitely not anything like I was expecting it to be. But yeah, let's just jump right into a attempted non-spoiler review of Beau is Afraid. Before going in to see Beau is Afraid, this is a 3-hour movie. Well, 2 hours and 59 minutes. It's 3 hours. You're either going to really find something in it and feel and be able to understand what's going on, and then there's gonna be people that don't and hate it. But it's one of those cases where you're not gonna get looked down on if you don't, not if you don't understand it, but I feel like you could understand it and just not enjoy the way that it's told. But I definitely feel like there are people who will find relatability in the way the story is told, and that'll bring much more like enjoyment into the overall experience of the movie. Enjoyment is a funny word because yeah, I enjoyed the movie. It was more of like I sat uncomfortably staring at the screen throughout the entirety of the 3 hours. If I had to like resemble what I looked like in the theater watching the movie, it really just had to be something like that. Because here's where I think I made a bit of a mistake. I went into this movie because it's Ari Aster, it looked confusing, and so my little brain, I was like, all right, I'm going to come out of this movie and I'm going to understand everything because I will get it. And so before walking in, I was like, I'm going to, eyes peeled, look around, look for attention to details, look for everything, and figure out what's going on in this movie from the start. It definitely didn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie, but I definitely think it could take away from yours if you're going in trying to like figure out what's going on really quickly, because the movie's not going to give you that. You do not get it ever. By the time the credits are rolling, you're left like, what did I just watch? And so if the whole time you're trying to figure out what's going on and in the end you don't get your answer, you're probably going to be left pretty pissed. But so that's why at around halfway through the movie, I kind of realized this and I was like, I am not going to get this answer. I'm not going to figure out what's going on. So I should just try to like, instead of keeping it on, let's flip it off. And there's definitely scenes where I was like, oh, I definitely am glad that I flipped the brain off because this is some wild crap. So for the general plot, it's about Beau, who is played by Joaquin Phoenix, and he has anxiety, but it seems like he has a lot more than that, or I wouldn't want to say an exaggerated sense of anxiety because I very quickly realized that all of these caricatures that are around in his life are very exaggerated and they're always staring at him, and I was like, these are the fears of someone with anxiety, that everyone is watching you and everyone kind of has some vendetta to get you. And so when I saw that all of these characters were doing that and every worst case scenario that I would play out in my head were coming true in the movie. Like he leaves his apartment building complex front door propped open so that he can run to the gas station across the street to get water because he took pills without water, which anyone would know that you're fine if you take pills with water. But on his pill case, there's like big red print that said always, always with water. And the crazy thing is that while I'm watching the movie trying to figure it out, he takes the pills without water, and my brain goes, well, I know he's fine if he doesn't take it with water, but he doesn't because he's anxious. But then he looks at the pill bottle and he reads the always with water in red print, and then my brain went, oh no, he needs to get water. Why doesn't he have water? As if it was a danger, and I was like, oh shit, that red pill bottle. But then I had to stop and be like, maybe it could have been like not even there, and he just like thought that that's what he read. He misread something. But I thought that was funny how the movie was kind of able to take my brain and trick it into Beau's world and believe the threat that he was in and kind of be like, oh my god, he needs to get water because he's running around to all the sinks trying to turn them on and none of them are working. And I was like, shit. But other than that, it really just goes on to, I at first thought it was going to be a three-act story, but when we were in what I thought was the third act, we jumped into what was a fourth act, and I was like, but then again, it's a 3-hour movie, so, and they utilize it all. They really squeeze the 3 hours, I'd say, with some tension scenes and holds. It's really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. But like I said earlier, there is like a halfway point where I knew I had to turn my brain off. And so while the first half, you're kind of following through, I would still say don't do what I did and look for an overall connecting story right off the bat, because I really do think that the first half is supposed to be enjoyed separately and kind of tell a different story from like a different perspective of like a different, I guess, mental illness and how that spreads and affects other people in their lives. Man, it really does seem like he was blending the ideas of like all his movies into one. And you really see, like, because if this movie is supposed to be like personal with his life, you really see where he would have gotten these ideas for these. Yeah. Not this one. Don't worry, I know that this movie is not directed by Ari Aster. It is just an A24 movie, and I do not own Hereditary, so I put it there. I do not think that Ari Aster directed The Witch. I know it's Robert Eggers. I keep getting lost. I keep getting sidetracked. I apologize. This movie's gets sidetracked. I do not have to apologize. You really get the sense of like the fact that it's anxiety, the movie, even down to like the edit. And you see that where when he thinks of things, or if someone brings up a memory, you will flash back to it for a bit, and then you'll cut back to him just like staring blankly, and you're like, oh, we were in his mind for a second. We were experiencing this like flashback that he had at the mention of an event. And I would also, something I also want to point out is that there's a lot of people that are saying it's funny, that it's a funny movie. I I didn't laugh once, I don't think, and that's not like a diss at the idea that it is funny, because everyone that I hear is saying that they were laughing and that it is a funny movie. Whereas I was taking it maybe too seriously, and I was just feeling bad the whole time for him. And also confusion because and I was really just feeling bad for him the whole time. So I believe that like if you go into it like I did, taking it seriously, you might feel bad. You'll feel bad for him and you'll take it seriously, or you won't feel bad for him and you'll think it's dumb. But if you do go in not taking it as seriously as everyone else, you might find humor in it because of the way that like Joaquin Phoenix acts and he speaks and all like the crazy stuff that's going on. I would say that it's not like that was a funny joke laughter. It was what am I watching laughter. So maybe I did. Maybe like a smile came on my face of just like pure what the fuck. In terms of like a scene making me go like that was funny, that never really happened. If anything, it was mostly I took it as like disturbing. Like I see it being used as like dark comedy, and I'm like, okay, I guess I could see that. I really don't know what else there is that isn't really spoilers in terms of like plot, because the plot is structured in a very chaotic way. You don't really, I mean, you do slow it down. It's hard to, because the movie takes its time and really drags you along, but like the shit you're seeing is nuts. So yeah, you're either gonna really love it or you're really gonna hate it. I feel like I've been saying that a lot about these movies, but I mean, we're really getting into a time where people are experimenting, and so you're gonna start diversing the crowd a little bit. I saw that this movie had a budget of 35 million, and it flopped. It only made like $1.5 million opening weekend. And that's tragic because like these are personal movies that directors are making, and I guess not everyone really cares, and I guess the money it's making kind of shows, because you are attracting a very specific audience, I think, to this movie when they were trying to really like they want to attract the widest audience to, bring in more so that he could make more movies, and it would have showed that like people were more interested in this kind of wacky, people are saying Odyssey 3-hour epic long movie. I saw a comment that was really funny that said that Ari Aster tricked Americans into watching a French film. It's just a different style of filmmaking and a different style of storytelling, and not everyone is going to be used to that. Not everyone is going to really jive with it, but I did. I thought it was great. I wouldn't say it's horror either. It's more thriller and stress-inducing than anything horror. There are some like scary scenes, I would say, and scary visuals, but nothing that's like it's more unsettling to look at than I'm scared. But I would say that if you are a Ari Aster fan and are intrigued to see really most of the inner mechanisms of his mind than we've ever seen, then I think you'll enjoy this movie. Don't take it too seriously, just enjoy the kind of ride that it throws you on with Beau through his POV strictly. You don't really see it through anyone else's eyes. But, so yeah, I'd definitely say you'd go see a movie. If you follow me on Letterboxd, you would have saw that I left a review last night on it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 because I really enjoyed it. And once again, the number rating, the stars are silly because there's going to be a movie that's at 4 stars that I probably enjoyed more than Beau is Afraid that sits at 4.5 stars, but in a different way. I don't take those number ratings too seriously, so Please don't take mine too seriously, because I'm not. But anyways, I believe it is time to delve deep, as try, and go into spoilers for this film. So, Beau's Afraid starts off from his birth, literally. It's black, you hear screaming, and you kind of hear like heart beating, and I would say like maybe like 2 minutes into that scene, I was like, okay, this is a birth. This is a birth scene. He immediately gets like smacked and he starts crying, and then you get the title. That was me being like, oh, I don't like this. Not that I don't like it, but I was very quickly shown that I was in for something weird. They caught me off guard. I'm not gonna go scene by scene because this movie's ridiculous. I'm gonna really just go through like the main parts that I feel like are important. After the birth, after the title card, we cut right to Beau in the future. I believe he's like in his 40s or 50s, and he's very clearly like tortured. And he has anxiety, and he takes his medicine for it. He's seeing his therapist. One thing I quickly noted is that, I mean, the therapist quickly noted he wrote down guilty, as in that's like the main theme of like what Beau's going through right now, because he is going back to visit his mother. Starting to be shown to us that Beau has like a rough relationship with his mom, and that he's really trying to go visit her, but he's still feeling kind of conflicted. And the therapist asks him if he ever wishes that she was dead, and he's quick to be like, no. We go on to see his like apartment life, and his apartment is really shitty. Throughout the night, like, this neighbor keeps slipping notes through his door telling him to turn his music down, but there's no music, and he, like, literally he's not playing any music, and every like hour they keep slipping another note under the door, as if he keeps turning it up and making it worse when he's just trying to get some sleep in quiet. And then they start turning their music really loudly next door. So I started thinking at this point, I was like, is he doing stuff that he's just not aware of, or is he hallucinating it? This was me taking it too seriously, I think, because I think it's just supposed to be, I think it's all supposed to be metaphorical, which I think is a big turnoff for some people, because there's moments like that where I go like, how does this make sense? But I guess in an anxiety-ridden person's mind, nothing's gonna really like make sense to an outsider, and it's metaphorically being put to screen, literally visually, of this like insane scenario of, I guess, someone's panicked thoughts. Because like I was saying earlier, he takes his medicine, and he's like has to sprint across the street to the gas station to get water. And even I was like tricked into the pill labeling saying that he needed the water. I was like, oh shit, he really needs it. But since he props the door open, everyone, because there's all these like crackheads and all these crazy people running amok outside his apartment, literally, like they're killing people outside. He sees all these people sprint into his apartment building, up the stairs into his specific room, and they're just tearing the shit up. And once they leave, he's finally able to go in, and it's all messed up. There's a guy hanging above his bathtub, just holding himself there, and then he falls onto Beau while he's trying to take a bath. They're spinning around in the tub for like a good 4 minutes straight scene, and I'm like, but so he's now naked because he ran out of the tub. He's running outside. He runs into a cop, and the cop is acting like he's about to shoot him. But I started, it's probably not real. But then he started acting as if like the angel thing in his hand is a weapon, and I don't know if that's. I keep trying to analyze it. This movie can't be analyzed. Okay, it's all metaphorical. So yeah, so the scene is just supposed to be his fear of cops, probably. His fear of getting hurt, his fear that the policeman will shoot him. But, he's naked and he's going crazy. I doubt that the cop was actually holding his gun at him. But, I mean, I don't know. Who knows these days? So he ends up running away from the cop, and then he gets hit by a van by this family. And I'm going to be honest, when I was watching the trailer and they were showing that family, I was convinced, I don't know why I thought that lady was his mom, and that the mom had hit him, and then he like returned home, and so that's where the story was going to go. So when it wasn't his mom and it was someone else. And oh, I'm forgetting things, important things. While he's in the apartment trying to like figure out how to visit his mom, he gets a phone call. No, he calls her and a UPS driver answers it, and he explains that she's dead. A chandelier fell on her head, and she's now dead. And like 10 minutes maybe after the phone call, that he was gonna be late or something because his keys were stolen and his luggage was stolen. Don't analyze it. I'm thinking that, like, is it too hard to believe that, like, he purposely, like, moved or lost his keys and luggage because of, like, a self-sabotage kind of thing, where he, deep down, didn't want to go back to his mom's, and so he was doing things without him really knowing to sabotage the trip? I wonder. I wonder if that is what happened. But anyways, this is where we get into what I believe to be like an act 2 of the film, because now we are following this other family, and you learn that they lost an older son in the military, and you pick up pretty quickly that they are trying to use Beau as a replacement for their kid. They're not getting over this death properly at all, and are just using Beau to kind of fill that spot. And you really see how that affects like their daughter, because she keeps trying to, well, not really, because she seems very angry about it. Like she knows she's being tricked, but she's also like, that whole family's drugged up. The dad is taking pills. The daughter eats those things like snacks. I was like, oh my god. So she's probably all fucked up, and I mean, she ends up drinking paint thinner. Not paint thinner, she just drinks paint. Beau is like trying to stop her, and the mom walks in and she's just dead, and it's weird. And people are like, this is funny, it's a dark comedy, and I'm like, I'm at a loss for words at like what I'm watching. Maybe I'm just a little baby boy. But it was so weird. Maybe because my own mind was like trying to come up, like I said, I was trying to come up with answers, and so it kept going to like, did he kill her? Because if you notice, at least what I noticed, when he's being filmed, if there's a camera on him, except the TV scene with the security system, but like when the daughter has her phone and she's recording him, he's saying things, but his lips aren't matching with the video. So that consistently stayed in my head as to like, I don't know what's actually happening. What is real? So when she kills herself with the paint, I kept thinking, I was like, did he do this? They keep hinting at something that he did, that he's done something. I was like, there's a news report on the TV that's saying that there's like a stab man who stabbed all these people. I was like, did he do that? Is he the stab man? So yeah, this whole family is just destroyed by the loss of the son. And then it kills their other kid. Like, these parents not handling the death of their one kid killed the other one. And it's just so dark. And there's this like ex-veteran with PTSD who I guess was with the son, who is being used by them as like security, because the daughter keeps going up to the shed and saying that Beau's in her room because they gave her his bed, and he just stares at him so angrily. And so I started thinking that, like, is he doing something? Like, what's going on? I don't know. But, you know, daughter drinks paint, she dies, and Beau runs off. Because the mom, like, sends the ex-Marine out to get him. So he's running through the woods, and he ends up showing up at, like, a theater play, a traveling theater group that lives in the forest, puts on this show. And this is one of my favorite parts of the movie, because they're putting on this play, and at first I thought that it was telling the story of Beau, but then I realized that it's Beau putting himself in a story that he wants. Or, you know, it could also symbolize it is Beau's story if he went a different way, or if he wasn't as anxious as he was, but it still ends in a way that's weird. It could be as like, because I'm going all over the place. This movie's all over the place. I feel like if you've seen the movie, you can follow along, but if you haven't seen the movie, if you just jumped into like a spoiler review, you're gonna be so lost. How do you think we felt watching the film? It's also revealed at some point that, because we go back to like this, we go back to him and his mom on a cruise trip, and there was this girl named Elaine, and her and Beau have like this little fling thing on the boat, like they kiss. Then after that, we learn that his dad died to climax during sex, and that climax is what gave birth to Beau. And she was explaining that it's genetic, and so he has the same thing. So, you know, like if you climax, little boy, you're gonna die. And he constantly shows giant balls. And it's like, dude. So it's like this mom instilling this fear of sex into her child so that he doesn't leave her, so that she's the only person in his life. And he keeps like a photo of Elaine because she gets like ripped out of the room during the cruise and taken away forever, and she yells to wait for her, and it's almost as if he does. And so I think the play is more of like if he didn't wait for her and he moved on and he left the grasps of all these like controlling figures. But I mean, you know, the play is my favorite sequence because it's him going through this like 2D animated world, and it's so cool. And it ends with him like finding his sons. Like the play ends with like him finding his sons that he left. He explains to the sons that his dad died due to having sex, and so he's never had sex, and so the kids are like, if you've never had sex, Dad, then how do we exist? And then he's kind of like, and then he snaps out of it, kind of cuts back to the Beau that we've been following, because he goes old during the play because it's him going through his whole life. So at the end of the play, the veteran finds them and starts blowing shit up and starts mowing down the audience, and he ends up dying by falling. He's like constantly holding the trigger. He doesn't let go. Even when the gun turns back at himself, like he trips and he starts shooting himself, he lands on the gun and he's still holding the trigger. And he's just blasting his shoulder off. So Beau continues to run, and then he ends up at the house. He ends up at his mom's house. I don't really remember how he got there from the forest to the house. He finds his way back to his mom's house. The funeral's over. He's the last to show up. He's late. And he sees his mom in an open casket for some reason when she got her head smashed in. So it's just a headless body. And he goes and he looks at the walls, and he sees all these not paintings. It's like memorabilia of this company that she owned. Throughout the whole movie, you see that her company's brand is on everything. It's on his microwave. It's also on the food that he throws away. So then you started to think like, this mom, in reality, is in control of everything. Like she's the food he's eating and the microwave he's using and all of these products, because you see like it starts with like pharmaceutical, all these medicine ads with Beau in them, and so then you think like, was he being put on these, or was he just being used for the advertisements? It goes on, he starts appearing less and less, and then you get this big photo. It's one of those collages where it's all of the people that worked for her creating this big photo of her. And he looks into it, and you see almost everybody that has been like around him, tormenting him. And then you see Elaine, you see the lady that told him to wait for him. And she ends up walking through the door. They talk for a bit, and then they end up going up to the bedroom, and they start to have sex. And Beau finishes, and he doesn't die. But she dies. she died from the sex. And this is one of the moments where I was confused again, because I didn't know why or how. I then started to think, like, is it a reverse? Like, when he's at his climax, it doesn't kill him, it kills the other person? Because it made me think of American Horror Story Coven. But So that threw me off a little bit, but we're not analyzing here. After after Elaine dies and he throws her off, the mom just walks in, and it's revealed the mom has been alive. She didn't die, and everything that has happened, all these people that have been like fucking with him, and even his therapist, they were all hired by her to test his love for her, to see how far he was willing to go to return and go to her funeral to see her dead body. And so all of these roadblocks were like tests of feet to see how, like, if he would be there on time. And then when he wasn't, and he sees that she's dead, and you kind of get a sense that he gets a sense of freedom after he sees her body. And so maybe that's why he gets more comfortable to like go up into the bedroom and have sex on her bed. But she starts like yelling at him about how she deserves unconditional love from him because that's what she gave to him, even though in reality she just like fucked him up and was super controlling, even up until his adult life. Like, the next scene, if I remember correctly, if this is the order that it goes in, she takes him to the attic to show him what's in the attic, because the attic has been like a big part in like this dream sequence that he keeps having of him in the tub, and a brother, it looks like, being put into the attic and kept up there. I kind of saw that as his second self that was more confident in standing up to his mother. But yeah, he goes up into the attic. She yells out as he's like going up there. He's yelling that it's a nightmare, and she yells that it's not a nightmare, it's a memory, and shuts him up there. And you see this like guy chained up, and then I didn't know if that was a dad that had been chained up there, or a brother that had been chained up there, or a visual representation of himself, his confident self, being chained up in the attic right next to a giant dick monster that has a face and has spider arms that pierce through the ex-veteran's head after he jumps through the window and tries to kill it and stabs it through the testicles many times. And yes, I now realize that the giant dick is more than likely a metaphor for his fear of sex, or a fear of his own, I guess, genitalia, because of the idea that it would kill him. Very weird. A very bizarre way to like visualize that to screen, but I mean, it was definitely something I'd never seen before. He falls back down the attic after being frightened by that thing, and I think this is when the mom starts yelling at him actually about all like the unconditional love and all that, and something snaps, and Beau just kind of like starts strangling her. He lets go, and he's like apologizing profusely, like, I'm sorry. But I feel like that kind of showed the mom his true feelings that he does. At like the question he was asked at the beginning, like, does he ever wish that she was dead? And he was like, oh, that's terrible. The strangulation at the end there kind of showed, I think, the mom that it was true and that he does want her dead. And I think it's shown that just the mere idea of that is enough to kill her. And so she collapses and falls under the tank of glass and presumably dies. After that, he walks out, gets on his boat, or finds a boat, and sails off into the night into this cave, which then these lights flick on and this big stadium is revealed in the cage. And if I'm being honest, I thought back to that Black Mirror episode, White Bear. And so I thought that Beau did do something, and we were about to see what happened through this, like, game show-esque recreation of events, like that Black Mirror episode was. But once, like, the two defense stands started going, there was it's the mom and her lawyer on one side of the stadium, and this big screen that's playing these memories, and he's yelling about how horrible Beau has been, and it's as if we're judging the whole movie and all of his actions that we've seen so far to see if he deserves to feel guilty. I definitely, the minute this scene started, after I got over the idea of the Black Mirror episode thing, this was it's a whole metaphor, I believe, to like a conscious battle of guilt. You have like his mom, who is probably the voice in his head telling him that he's shitty, and her lawyer kind of like stating all these facts about like what he did and through her eyes and like how horrible that must have been. And then you got like his side, his defense side on the other end of the stadium that doesn't have a mic. He's so quiet and can barely defend himself. It was sad, kind of, because for me, when he's trying to explain, like, like someone stole my keys, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, I was just like, I mean, we saw that happen. Like, we understand. But then I guess it's a case of that life you saw through the play. Is there a moment where the accountability goes away from mom and just lands on him because he's like in his 40s and he's still acting as if he's under this control by her? But you end up, when you realize that the mom hired all these people to fuck with him and test him, it's almost like, well, then in that case, then it isn't his fault. You did control him his whole life. But how much of that is real? How much of the security cameras, how big is this business? How much control does the mom actually have? And how much is it just his perception of him being under this control? Who knows? The ending I saw it as like a big metaphor of him judging himself. And the side that's going to be in his defense is going to be a lot quieter. And, the negative side, the side that his mom is on, is going to be completely overpowering the conversation. It ends with Beau, it looks like spider webs sticking his feet to the boat, and then the boat just kind of like flips. It looks like it exploded, but then it just flipped over, and he's like stuck under the boat, and you hear him like squirming around a bit, and then it kind of stops, and you're just left with like this big dark stadium, this pool of water, and a boat flipped over that Beau is under. And then the credits roll, and the whole credits is you looking at this like empty stadium as people are leaving and walking out of it. But what I think I noticed is that at the very, very end, the mom is the only one that's still silhouetted standing at the podium, just like watching. Yeah, a very hard to talk about, a very interesting, it's hard to discuss because of how metaphorical it is. Because I do think that there's a chance that nothing in this movie is real. It was all, because this is what my kind of idea of what the movie was going for near the end. My theory was that Beau kind of reliving these events he's lived before in his own mind. It's being shown to us through the way he was perceiving these events. Kind of like Joker. So maybe that was my problem. Joaquin Phoenix, I was like, Joker. The thing that I was hoping that it wouldn't be is the thing that I accidentally tricked myself into thinking it was gonna be. I really don't know. It's a 3-hour-long, epic movie about this 40 to 50-year-old man under the control of his crazy-ass mom. Is like the simplest plot line you could come up with for this movie, but it's told in the most chaotic structure of clips that you can find. Like that's where I think it is pretty interesting to really think about, is that in the grand concept of this movie, it isn't very complicated. It's a mother who, once she gave birth, her dad probably left, and so she has this negative view of her husband. Negative view of her husband for abandoning her and the kid. She probably doesn't want that to happen again, and so she feeds this idea into Beau that if he has sex, then he'll die, which puts in a sense of fear of sex for the rest of his life, so that he doesn't ever find anyone else besides her. there's even times where you think like if he hired, if the mom set up the whole like skit of Elaine and her mom running into the cruise room to like kick her out and for her to yell, to wait for him, I'm not to, for him to wait for her, so that he does it and just holds out for Elaine his entire life and doesn't sleep with anybody else. But yeah, so it's honestly just a movie about the mom's effect on him. I really don't think there's too much else I can really say about Beau's Afraid, other than you could get some comedy out of it. You could get some deep, disturbing feelings out of it, depending on who you are. However, as unfortunate that it is that this movie didn't do good at all at the box office, I do think that it's still going to be like a cult classic film that people will enjoy. There is an audience for it. Granted, it's probably small, as shown by the budget, by the box office. I feel like you can get something out of it. But yeah, that was my late review for Beau's Afraid. As much of a review as that could be. I thought it was really good. It's a good third flick for Ari Aster. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get another movie like this from him, though, because of how not well received it seems to be getting. I think that you should go see it while it's out. Probably not going to do much. I think it's been a while. This movie's probably done for unless, Blu-ray streaming sales have an effect on that and make it do a lot better. I would definitely say you should go out and go see Beau's Afraid. And that's really all else I have to say. I'll see you in the next video.